Hi, this is Adrian from Tactical Project Manager, and I hope you are doing great. I'm excited to share with you an interview I recently conducted with one of my followers. His name is Jimmie Hines. He is an Army veteran with a very interesting background and a lot of leadership experience, who now works in a project management role in the military industry. We talked about the traits and habits of great leaders, and specifically how you can earn the respect as a leader. It has been a very interesting discussion, and Jimmie shares many great tips to help you improve your leadership style. And we talk about very specific habits to help you build trust with your team members and earn the respect as a leader. So let's jump right into the interview. Welcome, Jimmie. Thanks for being available for this interview and a discussion about leadership and sharing your story. I'm really excited to have you on this. What is this, a podcast or a recording? So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
First of all, I'm very interested, and like the followers of Tactical Project Manager also, like, who is Jimmie Hines, and kind of the story of yourself, where are you located? So some background about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm located in Tampa, Florida. I'm a 26-year Army, retired 26-year Army veteran. My primary background was supply and logistics, and did a lot of project management while I was in the service. I actually originally had started out wanted to become a chef, and I actually did. I actually was able to get my culinary degree. I was in the Army I originally joined the Army to be a cook, and went to deployed, went to Bosnia, was able to come back with my college money and earn my degree as a culinary management, culinary management basically. And 9/11 kind of changed things, and I went from I was active duty, and I went to National Guard, and 9/11 came, and I went back active duty, and ever since then I have went back into active service, and where I served more in a logistics role. And I think around 2010 or so, I ended up kind of realizing that what I was doing was mostly project management. I mean, everything is like getting ready to deploy, getting ready to go to some type of training event. Everything was starting with the initial phase through planning and executing and monitoring that, and finally closing. And that whole kind of that concept, I was really driven to that. And a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic kind of broke out, I was able to earn my PMP degree, and I was able to retire from the Army as with experience, and then I had the credentials as a PMP manager. Been married for 20 years. I have 3 sons. My wife and I have a nonprofit that it's called Experience Autism Alliance, and we assist families that have loved ones with autism through charitable means. And I also do some freelance work with a company called Hawk Dynamic Solutions. And what we're driven towards is delivering a software that for the Army National Guard, the supply chain managers, so that they can file all their records. Everything's going digital. So that's what this software is to help with.
Great. What have been like the major stages in your career, and also from a leadership point of view, how did your leadership involvement and responsibilities change in your career?
I think as far as major achievements, I think one of the things that I'm really proud of is the last deployment I was on it was for Operation Enduring Freedom. It was in Djibouti, Africa, which is located in East Africa, like the Horn of Africa, like Somalia and Ethiopia. And I was really proud of the fact that I was able to take large amounts of supplies and equipment and personnel and move them over, been moved overseas successfully there and back without losing anything, and that was really a big success. I think during that time as well, I kind of realized that my leadership style had evolved to more, task and purpose driven type leadership, where, there's a problem, I get with my staff, and, I just basically present the problem to them, and we work it out together, because I've learned over the years that being able to present a problem to your staff and allow them to kind of come up with ideas you've never even thought of, And I I think the biggest thing I've realized that I've kind of defined is that I think that's really worked great for me, because that also allows them to have some ownership of the project. They're bought in, and you just basically you give them authority and kind of let them write limits, and they'll just go after it, you know. And I think that's been very successful with for all the teams, small and big, that I've worked with.
How many people have you managed or led over time? I mean, in the various stages.
Yeah, I've been in charge of as many as about 30 people, which is roughly a platoon size in the Army. To small, you know, two and three. You know, typically, I'm more, I guess, over the period of time I've worked with teams of 2 and 3. You know,
Yeah.
Very high skilled, you know, very high skilled, very knowledgeable, you know, teams that just we just solve complex problems. So I'm more accustomed to that kind of, but I'm used to working in a 30-man team where there's several managers working.
And you just mentioned also what you've learned from a leadership perspective, so giving more responsibility to your team members. If you look back, like how did you start as a leader? What were your initial habits, and what was your initial leadership style? Maybe things that didn't go so well, and how did it change over time so that you came to this the status you are at now?
I think, you know, early on in my military career, you know, I was able to, you know, achieve the rank of a sergeant pretty quickly. And I think the leadership style I had adopted was more very hands-on, working side by side. You know, we're down in the trenches, and we're getting it done. We're working together. You know, hey, I'm telling you what needs to happen, and I'm working with you. So very hands-on. And I think over time, as I got more responsibility, where I got actual, picked up a manager that was working for me. So he was kind of like, you know, it was him and I working together as a team. And then I got more managers. I think my leadership style adjusted to where it was a little bit, not necessarily in the weeds with them, and more involved in the planning. And that's a little difficult especially when you're hands-on. You know, you're very, you got to you're helping load the vehicles, but then need to be somebody planning in the background. You know, so that was a little difficult for me. And I've been fortunate enough to have some leaders that I've worked for that they're kind of like, take my collar, hey, come here, you know, come back over here, and to be helping load the truck or doing all these things.
Right. So you gave away the more the technical work, the detailed work, and you focused more on coaching and helping with the planning and work like that.
Exactly.
One thing that I found interesting by studying your profile, you mentioned, or you emphasized, that you earned the reputation of a trusted or of a respected leader. So the question I have, or the discussion I want to start, that like leadership or being a leader is maybe not something we can just make ourselves, but it's something we earn. So that's something you emphasize. So what do you think?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question, because that's something that's been like a lifelong thing that I've asked myself. You know, because I've always wanted. I've worked for some really good leaders, and I've tried to aspire to, you know, at least, you know, close to their level of what I thought was just, you know, very great leadership. And one of the things that I really have always used as a leader to earn respect is, you know, do what you say and say what you do. You know, you make commitments and you make promises, and you say that you're going to get things done. You need to honor those, and you also need to honor your mistakes. You know, and say and be upfront, and say, hey, I messed up. I think there's that, and that's some leaders that I worked for in the past. I would say, like, that were bad traits. Were guys that made huge mistakes, and all they had to say was, hey, I messed up, but they either shifted the blame or denied it.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that some leaders think is a sign of weakness, but I think it's a sign of strength, where you kind of show some vulnerability.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I'm not Superman. I'm not perfect. I do know I have a lot of education and knowledge, but I don't know I don't know everything, and I make mistakes, and I own them. And I think that's really important as a leader trying to earn respect. You can have the title, the position, from sergeant to officer to director of supply chain, VP. But I think if you don't do those simple things, I think you just won't be as successful.
So it's probably also, it takes time, right? I mean, you have a story, a background, and how your style evolved over time. Probably it requires patience to arrive at that stage. What do you think?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it really does. That's something I've had to learn. I'm 44 now, and I'm just starting to learn patience. I think I've been impatient a lot of time. There's been. I mean, I'll admit there's been times where I've come in and I'm like, hey, I'm this certain position, then you guys should do what I say and get it done. It really took time. I look back, it took me a lot of time to kind of build that. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something it's through conversations and solving problems together and making mistakes, learning from those, and it does take time.
And a common challenge I know many fresh leaders struggle with is like delegating work and having patience with the team members. So it's always easier to do some of the work yourself, and you have the knowledge to do the work yourself, but you should be focused on your leadership work. How can people cope with that? Like when they have a team like you?
Yeah, that's right. You're right. That's a difficult thing, like you said. That hey, we can do the work. We know. I know the fastest way to do it. The fastest way to do this X, Y, Z. I'll just knock it out. But like you said, it takes time. It takes away from you kind of being, leading that tactical level and being more sometimes you have to be a little more strategic as a manager. And I think you can't be afraid to delegate. I think you give your staff that kind of left and right limit to where, hey, if you think you're behind by this, if it's not done by this date, then come talk to me. If you're ahead of time, then come talk. You kind of tell them where they're at, and you give them the authority to do it. And then like I said earlier, you'll be surprised about how they're able to solve that situation. It's something you have never have thought of. Something more efficient. And I think part of that is that you've also got to be able to create a climate where your staff is not afraid to make mistakes. They can come to you.
Okay.
They can come to Jimmie. They can come to Adrian and say, hey, I messed up. I totally messed up. But what I want to do is this. And that's something I also kind of always turned it around. Like, okay, you messed up. What do you recommend? What's your solution? I try to make that we work the solution together. Instead of just, hey, I messed up, I don't know what else to do. Sometimes that happens, but we try to work the solution together, and they still own it.
Right. And you said something like people want more. They have the creativity, they have the energy and the ideas to figure out problems or find solutions. But I think a lot of times we have some misconceptions about what motivates our people. Like some people, they want to have more work, they want to have more responsibility. Did you initially have some misconceptions about what motivates your team?
Yeah, I think to kind of go on talking about early on, I thought my thought process was I'm the leader. I kind of hold all the cards, and when I'm around, you guys will do execute what I put out, and then they'll be they'll take care of the task, and then then I'll go back to my boss and get more. But I think what I learned as over time was that if I was the one constantly holding all the information and I was the only one to answer those questions, then and then what if I go down? What if I get sick? It's something to kind of think about that's unique to the military. The unfortunate case of I get wounded or I get taken out of action. The next person needs to step up. If I haven't prepared my staff to step into my position, then I think I'm a failure. And I think that could be applied to any situation, military or not, where
Right.
So-and-so's sick. I mean, especially nowadays, we have to consider that to be, with the pandemic, we have to consider some people can't be in the office. So, Jimmy has to step up when the supervisor's not there. I think that's important for a leader to kind of, that is important for a leader to foster mentor their people.
So it's a lot about being open and sharing, communicating a lot with the team members, right?
Absolutely.
And giving them all the information and the resources they need. Now, one of the reasons why it's so hard to become a leader is also, I mean, it's not something you can learn from a textbook. So ideally, you have good mentors and role models. What were some role models for you which that showed great leadership skills?
I mean, I have to give credit to my last supervisor when I was in the military. He was a chief warrant officer, which is basically a specialist. He's very highly trained technician in his field. Someone who's very all warrant officers in the military are very technical. They are the subject matter expert of their particular field. So I worked for a gentleman by the name of Wayne Hilton, and he was a great mentor for me because he was always the first one there and the last to leave.
Mm-hmm.
He led by example. He said what he was going to do, and he did what he said. He owned his mistakes. I mean, some of these things that I've adopted as my own leadership style came a lot from him. I worked for him for the last 3-4 years, but I've known him for I think 15 years, and I've kind of interacted with him throughout the years. He's been my mentor, to be able to talk to him, run things by him where I couldn't have talked to my supervisor, and just run things by him to say, hey, what do you think about this situation? What would you have done? I think it's really important that everybody has that type of person that they can confine in and run things by without and get a straight answer. That's not they're not trying to sugarcoat anything.
Right, it's great. And do you also have bad examples of someone you've worked with, a leader, and a specific action you recall which was not a good indication of leadership qualities?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, and it's kind of I guess it's burned in my my memory, is that I've worked for a couple people that made some pretty big mistakes, but they never owned it. They either blamed other people or blamed me, and just were so focused on shifting the blame, and it created a rift on our whole team, because we were working for this person, and we spent more time talking about, hey, wish you just would have owned it instead of blaming somebody, blaming us. We work for you, we do things to help you out, and you're more worried about your image. And I think that's just something that I think is an example of bad leadership. Just someone who's very concerned about their image, very concerned about what people think about them. I'm not saying you have to be a rude person. By saying, hey, I don't worry about what people think. I think what's important is that you focus on getting the job done. Consider people's situation, but at the same time, it's not a popularity contest. You got to make those hard. You're paid to make those hard decisions and hold people accountable.
Right. Thanks for sharing these ideas, Jimmie. And what are some things that you have, or some feedback you have gotten from your team members and the people you've worked with, for where your leadership skills have really stood out, and things that people liked when they worked with you?
The best feedback I've received is the fact that they weren't afraid to come to me. My staff wasn't afraid to come to me with a problem. They tried to work it out as best they could. But for the most part, if they got to a situation where they could not figure it out, and they knew to come to me with don't just say you ran to an obstacle and then you just came right back. Tell me what did you do? What was your thought process? Did you do this? Did you do that? They know that I would have asked them 1,000 questions. So they they knew what I expected out of them, and that's I think that was a key thing, that they knew what I expected out of them. They weren't afraid to come to me for a solution, and I gave them task and purpose and the authority to accomplish that mission. There's a lot of times some of the people that work for me had either gone on to get promoted, or had achieved a level of their position where they wouldn't have gotten there before. I guess because just working with me, and but in reality, to me, they thank me for helping them. In reality, they helped me out.
Right.
But really, I always give the praise to them. They're the ones that are getting the job done. I just come up with some crazy old man ideas.
But that's great, and you have, in that way, you have like passed on your leadership culture, your leadership style to the next generation, and it's gonna reflect back positively in the organization for many more years. So that's really.
I hope so. That's just really what my that's really truly what I hope for. That I hope I've been able to make some type of, wherever I'm at, made some type of impact, and the staff that I had were able to go on and do bigger and better things than I ever did. And there's a lot of examples of that happening, that they've just gone on and exceeded where I've ever been, and that I think that's the best thing that a leader could ask for.
So it's really the feedback from the team that you get, and not the status, like the status attributes, like a big watch or whatever.
Yeah.
a nice corner office. It's really the feedback you get from the team, right?
Although they did, I don't know if you can see, there's an axe on the wall.
I can see that. What is that?
That's an axe my team gave to me on my last deployment, and it says, because at the time we were all into Game of Thrones, so it says House Hines, 2016 to 2017, Horn of Africa. So my team, I was pretty fortunate. I thought that was pretty cool. They knew I like axes and medieval stuff, and
amazing. Thank you so much, Jimmie. Finally, what tips can you give people who are new in a leadership position, or they want to become leaders, either project leaders or team leaders? Like, what would you tell them? What are your recommendations? How can they become great leaders?
There's three things that really help me achieve what I've done so far, and one of them is never stop honing your craft. Never stop trying to become better. I think that's why it led me to your blog on LinkedIn and following your website. I'm just always looking for a better way to do things more efficiently. I constantly read, not necessarily self-help books. I'm always reading, kind of like military fiction books, just about leadership. Always just trying to become better. So never stop honing your craft. I think the second thing would be to, give people task and purpose and the authority to get things done. You're not going to give the intern that's only been there for 2 weeks something that you're going to set them up for failure. You're going to give them a task that's according to what of their capabilities are, and you let them do it. And they might mess it up, but then you don't bring that up. You give that task to them again. You just keep give them those reps, those repetitions, so that they can become better. Maybe they need more time working on that task. Just keep giving it to them. If they do good at it, then give them something a little bit, and just give them a little incrementally until they reach a limit.
Right.
That, and then I think that leads into the third thing, which is have an open door policy to where your team, or even if it's just one person, can come to you and tell you openly, hey, I messed up, and work through that problem with them. And I think that's the biggest thing, where you're open, because if you have a climate where your staff is hiding potential mistakes, it'll blow up in your face. And I've never seen a good example of where it was great that they hid a mistake or hid something that worked out great. Maybe I just didn't know about it. Don't be, create a climate where you're not afraid to make mistakes.
Great. Thank you so much, Jimmie, for being available for this interview.
Yeah.
And there were so many great insights and tips that we can all learn from. Implementing those tips, that's another the other side. It takes time, it takes practice, but to hear from an experienced leader like you, it's extremely valuable. So thank you so much for coming on Tactical Project Manager.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor. Appreciate it.